Hello, this is Chef John from foodwishes.com with 4 peppercorn roast beef. That's right, we're going to use the 4 horsemen of the peppercorn apocalypse for this very special holiday-inspired roast recipe. And speaking of revelations, we're going to use a cut of beef, the tri-tip, that many of you have grilled during the summer, but maybe have never considered using in a recipe like this, which is a shame because it works so perfectly. And first up, we're going to prep the aforementioned peppercorns. We got your standard black. We're also going to use some white peppercorns and some green peppercorns, which yes are a little shriveled, but don't be concerned. I think that's normal. And then last but not least, the most festive of all peppercorns, the pink peppercorn. Check it out. That is pretty Christmassy. But anyway, I'm going to take roughly equal parts of all 4 peppercorns, and we're going to want to give those a very coarse grind. I just threw them in one of these hand-turned pepper grinders, using the coarsest setting possible, and in just a short 45 minutes later, I had like 3 tablespoons. So yeah, that took a while. I should probably have used my spice grinder. But you know what? My wrists have been looking a little chunky, so it's good to get a workout in. And then we'll just set that aside while we prep our tri-tip roast. And there it is, the beef tri-tip. And you can see there at the top, at the bigger end, it kind of forms a triangle, hence the name tri-tip roast. And these usually run about 2.5 pounds, so very nice size for a dinner party. And mine came trimmed, and yours probably will too, but if it didn't, you want to trim it up pretty well. You want to take off any silver skin, or if there's a thin layer of the white fat on there, you can leave that, that's fine. And then before we coat this bad boy, we're going to go ahead and make a little bit of a garlic paste, which is simply a few cloves of garlic in the mortar with a pinch of salt, to which I added a little splash of olive oil, which was a total rookie mistake. Everybody knows you smash the garlic and the salt first, then you add the oil. It still works, it just takes like an annoying 5 minutes longer. But anyway, smash that into a paste, and then we're going to go ahead and paint it on our tri-tip, and we're going to do this to both sides. We're going to paint the garlic on, then we're going to very thoroughly coat it with kosher salt. Don't be shy, that's a big hunk of meat. And then after you salt it, we're going to go ahead and press on those peppercorns, and we're going to cover the entire surface, or at least I am. And yes, it's going to be very peppery, but it is called peppercorn beef after all. And once that side's covered, I'm going to flip it over and do the exact same thing. Garlic paste, salt, peppercorns. And after both those flatter sides are covered, we're going to go ahead and get any exposed area. So bottom line, when you're done, that entire tri-tip will be covered in garlic paste, generously salted, and pressed with those cracked peppercorns. So that's looking great right there. And then I'm going to do one optional step, just so this recipe takes an entire extra day. I'm going to throw this on a little rack so it sits up off the pan, and I'm going to refrigerate that uncovered in my empty spare refrigerator in the garage that I'm sure everybody has. And I'm just going to leave that to sit and kind of dry overnight. So it's not really dry aging, but kind of the same idea. It's going to dry out a little bit of water is going to evaporate, it's going to concentrate the flavors a little bit, and it's really going to give that peppercorn crust a chance to adhere and permeate the meat with flavor. And then the next day I took it out, it looked like that. Pretty much looked the same. It gets a little darker, but don't be alarmed. And then before we pop that in the oven, I like to let it sit out on the table for 1 hour to warm up a little bit. Never a bad idea with a large piece of meat you're going to roast. And then when we are ready to cook, we're going to take a large skillet, big enough to fit that piece of meat. I'm going to melt a couple tablespoons of butter, but we're not going to sear this. We're going to turn it off as soon as it melts. We're going to toss our beef in. I'm going to coat one side with the butter. I'm going to turn it over, coat the other side. And then that's pretty much ready for the oven, except I am going to give it a little more salt on top. Like I said, it's a big piece of meat, and you're going to have to try super hard to oversalt it. Unfortunately for home cooks, usually the opposite is the case, and they undersalt, and then they wonder why it's bland. So anyway, a little more salt, and then we're going to go ahead and pop that into a very well preheated 450-degree oven for 15 minutes. So we're going to start this off very hot, and then after 15 minutes, we're going to pull it out. We're going to turn our oven down to 200. We'll go ahead and flip over the roast, and then we'll pop that back in and we'll continue roasting at that low temperature for, I don't know, about 15-20 minutes more, or until it looks like this, and the internal temperature, for me at least, is 130. That's what I'm recommending. You cook it how you want. You are the boss of your angle-shaped roast. But I went to 130, and at that point we're going to transfer that onto a plate to rest, and I want you to tent that, but very loosely with foil. And just let it sit there resting for at least 15 minutes. Which is the perfect amount of time to finish the pan sauce. So we're not going to pour off any of that fat. You should have about a tablespoon or 2 in there. We're going to put that on medium heat. We're going to sprinkle in about a tablespoon of flour. We're going to cook that, stirring with our whisk, for about 2 minutes, just to take the raw edge off that flour. And at that point, we're going to whisk in 3 cups of some very, very delicious beef or veal stock. Although, you know what? I used neither. I used oxtail stock, which I use as kind of a cheater demi-glaze, which I'm going to show you. But anyway, I went ahead and whisked in my oxtail stock, and then we're going to finish this with standard Food Wishes pan sauce procedure. Oh, you know how we do. We simply reduce this until it's the consistency we want. So turn your heat up to medium-high, bring it up to a simmer, and while we're waiting for that to boil, we can go ahead and season it up a little bit. Now, I'm thinking you're not going to need any black pepper, but you may need some salt. And even though it totally didn't need it, I added some cayenne, because that's what I do. And then, like I said, we're simply going to reduce this down until it's the texture we want. And when it's getting close, I'm going to add the final ingredients, which is just a small splash of balsamic vinegar. It's going to help with that beautiful, gorgeous brown color. It's also going to add a little bit of acidity and sweetness to the sauce. And by the way, don't let this fool you. I turned the heat down just so I could film it. You can just keep yours simmering. And then last but not least, make sure you pour off any accumulated juices from your resting tri-tip plate. You cannot waste that. That would be a crime. All right, so I stirred in my juices, and I kept cooking until it was perfect. And what did that look like for me? Here you go. Check it out. That is one super sexy sauce. Look at that shine. I could actually comb my hair in that pan. If, I had hair. So anyway, our sauce is set. We're going to turn that off, and it's time to carve the beef. We're going to start on that small end and cut across the grain. Now, for appearances, I probably should have started on the larger, rarer end, but that's okay. Even this meat that's almost well done at the end was still amazingly juicy and flavorful. And of course, as you cut towards that larger end, the meat's going to get pinker and less cooked. And by the way, crazy people, the juices aren't blood. Come on, read a book. But anyway, we're going to slice that up. We're going to plate that up. Warm plates, of course. And then we're going to spoon over that pan sauce. And that, my friends, was a spectacular roast beef. And I think you can see from this shot, that meat is so tender and so juicy and so, what do the kids say these days? Amazeballs, that you simply have to give it a try. The tri-tip, a very popular cut during the summer for grilling, yet very seldom used in the winter for holiday roast. And I'm not sure why. It works so beautifully. So I really do hope you give this a try. Head over to foodwishes.com for all the ingredient amounts and more info, as usual. And as always, enjoy.